Welcome to the Jewish Genealogical Conference 2020 that is happening this year in the cybernetic space. My name is Stanislawow. So, my presentation is about the history of Stanislawow ghetto, people who stayed there, also related records where they could be found and where they were found, addresses, stories of individual persons, who were the victims, who were the perpetrators, what material evidence of this terrible crime and the sites related could be found in the town of Stanislawow and in the archives of different countries. Specifically, this will be Stanislawow ghetto records, vital statistical records that were done between the years 1941 and 42. Some of them are kept in the collection 154 of Przemysl Archive, which is in the eastern part of present-day Poland. Who were the victims of this ghetto, and among others the destiny of deportation of the Hungarian Jews, how and why they appeared in Stanislawow, and specific names of people who appeared in this terrible.
Hello, my name is Stanislawow. For the last 30 years I work as genealogist, a researcher of the Jewish settlements, Jewish history and the history of the Shoah. Some 10 years ago in Przemysl, Poland, I have found a collection 154, which is divided into two parts: the identified and non-identified Jewish records. So this was a challenge for me, and I decided to clean up, to identify, specify the unknown records. For that purpose I have made samples of the last names of the streets from the documents that I was able to access, and made certain analysis, spoke with a number of people who know the old history of different towns. So, to my opinion, the most interesting finding in this collection were documents related to the town of Stanislawow, which is now known as Ivano-Frankivsk. As we found out, these documents related to the fortune of the victims of Stanislawow ghetto and present recordings of the death that took place in the ghetto. The deaths also could be divided into two parts. There are death with the causes of death and documents without. Also these records are accompanied with the street addresses and information about the age of people and their addresses. After all that, I have managed to make a database showing the list of names, last names, given names, the ages and the street addresses of the deceased persons. So I've made a database. It is published in some sources in the internet, and also have all the scans of these records as the hard copies. So this project will show the streets, the places where most of these deaths took place, and I will say a few words about each particular place, what people lived there, why they died, why they appeared here. One more feature of these records is that not all people in the Stanislawow ghetto were the citizens of the interbellum Poland. There was quite a large group of the Hungarian citizens, over 1,000 persons, and the fortune and the history of these people looks also quite interesting. These people came over here in the very first days of July 1941, as the result of persecutions that took place in the Hungarian part of Subcarpathia, in the area of Carpathians known also as Carpathian Ruthenia or Karpatska Rus. These people, as I've already said, were Hungarian citizens, and were brought here by train to this particular station where I am now. This is actually probably the oldest railroad bridge in Ukraine, made in the times of Austro-Hungary, in the times of Franz Joseph, and this bridge probably has more than 100 years. Anyway, they were brought here to this town, to this particular station, and then they were moved to the place known as the local mill, and placed at this mill. In the mill they were dying of different causes, if we believe this vital statistical data at all. And there are several thousands of cases of death in the mill records. We shall show the mill later, and I will say more about it. Anyway, this will be my contribution to this conference during the pandemic of COVID-19. Unfortunately, we cannot meet in person. However, I'll do my best to show as much and to tell as much about this sad, however, a very important story of the Jewish life of Galicia. Thank you.
How and where these records found? I have found these records in collection 154 of Przemysl archive. The collection is called Izraelicka Gmina Wyznaniowa i Żywu, collection 154. While researching something completely different. So I found some documents that were labeled, just showing the place they originate from, and some documents non-identified. So there is the whole set of non-identified records. Among them, probably the most valuable finding was broader census of the mid-19th century, and of course Stanislawow Kehila records done between the years 1939 to 1942. So who and why kept these records? It is a difficult question, and how they appeared at all in Przemysl archive, which is not really connected to the town of Stanislawow, Ivano-Frankivsk, or some other places. This collection appeared in the archive after the war in 1945. Why Nazis preserved these documents? Big question. Since, you know, with all their anti-Semitism, why would they keep these records? It's a puzzle. We do not know. Anyway, the documents are there. Some of them are in good condition, some are in bad condition. On some documents you can even see signs of fire and dirt. However, all are readable. And I will speak about two specific items that are related to the town of Stanislawow. How did they find out that they are really from Stanislawow, not from some other place? There are no signs of the town. However, their names and their street names. So I've made samples of the family names and the set of street names. So some of the street names are unique only for the town of Stanislawow. They leave no doubt that these two items that I will speak about in this presentation come from this town. So, as I've said, there are two items. One is the alphabetical list, and the second are the vital statistical records. The alphabetical list presents approximately 2,000 entries, 2,000 names of individuals and their addresses. Some letters in this alphabetical list are missing, and at the end there is a page showing around 7,000 people who might have been originally in this list, and divide them into males, females. Most probably this alphabetical list also relates to the times of the Holocaust. Who these people were? Most probably they were people who were moved from certain addresses to ghetto. I think this is a list of people who were forced to leave their regular apartments and move to ghetto. And the vital statistical records. Vital statistical records also done within actually two historical periods. The Soviet period, 39 to 41, and Nazi period, 41 to until March 1942. The Soviet documents are not so numerous. They are done in the Russian language and in the Polish language. The Nazi period documents are done in the Polish language. Some of the documents, some of the pages are regular, like letterheads with like tables printed on machine, and they also use the reverse sides because of the deficit of paper, I assume. However, the format is basically the same. Most of the records are death records, with approximately 20% birth records. I haven't seen any weddings. So there is also part of the collection 154, which is Hebrew and Yiddish language documents belonging to different communities. I've worked more precisely with one collection related to the town of Turka. So in this, I've shared this collection with a rabbi from New York, and he even found his relatives in this collection. Who are the persons listed in the death records of Stanislawow Kehila? What is their citizenship? Most of these people are the former citizens of Poland. Obviously, some were USSR citizens by the year 1941. However, there is a large group of Hungarian citizens who were moved from the territory of Hungary, which is now actually the territory of the Zakarpatska Oblast of Ukraine, also known as Karpatska Rus, Carpathian Ruthenia. Why they were moved, it's also a big question. Probably because of the persecutions, but it is known for sure that in the beginning of July 1941, several trains came from Transcarpathia, from the other side of the mountains, full with people, and they were moved to the Rudolf Mill. The place is called Rudolf Mill in Stanislawow, where they were kept for a while. Then some of them were moved further to Kamenets-Podolsky, where they were being executed. Some remained in Stanislawow and were killed there. A few people escaped. So I will also show the map of Stanislawow ghetto and the map of the town to understand how the ghetto of Stanislawow arose, what were the main objects in this ghetto, what was happening there during the period between July 41 until March 1942. I'll show you several houses where the deaths were registered inside the ghetto and also outside ghetto. Actually, the deaths that were registered outside the ghetto, they were from the earlier period, from before the ghetto was organized. Could we find the living relatives of the listed persons? If so, how and where? In this presentation, I will show a small video with Rabbi Kolesnik, who, using this database from the death records of Stanislawow ghetto, he managed to connect people who escaped the war, who escaped the Shoah and stayed in Russia during the war. He helped them to find the sad destiny of their relatives. So this will be included in this presentation. What further research or investigation analysis could be done? I think it would be very good to find connection between the Hungarian citizens who died in Stanislawow ghetto and their origin, where they come from. Because the death toll of the Shoah in Subcarpathia on the Hungarian occupied territory was not as high as it was in the general government or in the district of Galicia, to which Stanislawow, starting from 1st of August 1941, belonged. So there could be connection to their origin and actually connection to some of their living relatives who might still be alive in different countries. So what other documents were created during the same time period and could be found in the other archives? Probably the most known collection is the collection of card files of Judenrat, card files from Lemberg, Lviv, which is kept now in Lviv Central Historical Archive. And also in Ivano-Frankivsk they have a collection of Arbeitsamt cards files showing the able-bodied part of the Jewish population who were applying for different jobs of the enterprises of this province. So they belong to the same time period and also very unique. So welcome to my presentation. So speaking about the events of Nazi occupation, which is early July 1941. So here is the story. A dramatic event which took place at that time was the arrival of several thousand Jewish refugees from the Carpathians, who were exiled by the Hungarian government. The refugees were in a dreadful situation, broken, worn out, frail, hungry, ill, and destitute. Since they had been plundered and ruled by the Hungarian and Ukrainian population, they were put up in the flour mill that was owned by Samuel Rudolph, an unfinished building at that time, several stories high at Halicka Street in Stanislawow. Very few of them, only the most resourceful of them, were able to move on from there to find some sort of job or source of livelihood and to intermingle with the local population. The majority remained in the place even afterward, when the ghetto was set up. The local Jews attempted to assist these refugees from Hungary. The baker Yakov Krigel was very active in this effort. Day after day, he went from house to house with a hand-drawn carriage, collecting food and clothing for the refugees. The Judenrat that had been set up attempted to assist these refugees as much as possible by providing a kitchen and other necessary facilities. They also provided a full-time doctor. Nevertheless, this building turned into a house of death due to hunger and the cold. The building was separate from the ghetto and was supervised over by the Jewish firefighters. Among 1,000 sick and frail Jews lived in this building until the main action of March 31, 1942. They were first to be killed in the action. The first massacre of Jewish people from Hungarian territory took place on August 1941, when government officials ordered the deportation of Jews without Hungarian citizenship, primarily refugees from other Nazi-occupied countries, to Ukraine. Roughly 18,000 to 20,000 of these deportees were slaughtered by Friedrich Jekyll and his SS troops. Only 2,000 to 3,000 survived. These killings are known as Kamenets-Podilsky massacre. So part of the refugees from Stanislawow were moved further east to Kamenets-Podilsky, where they've been killed. There is a monument there, by the way. This event, in which the slaughter of Jews for the first time numbered in the 10th of thousands, is considered to be among the first large-scale massacre of the Holocaust. So you will see in the presentation the photos and the video from the site where the Hungarian deportees were taken.
This is the old terminal of Stanislawow station, through which many thousands of Jews from this town and to this town were brought during the period of the Shoah. This area is located a bit a kilometer or so from the main railroad station, and they used it to keep things quiet, not to show much to the local population of the crime they were doing. To the right side from here is the old railroad bridge, what remained of it actually. Now it's used for some gas pipeline, and further on is the new bridge. So this is the place to which Jews were brought to Stanislawow station from Hungary, from other places in Ivano-Frankivsk province, and brought away from here to the death camps of Belzec, Majdanek, and possibly other.
This is the general view of the Stanislawow railway station terminal from the other side. A few meters further on was a platform to which the refugees or deportees from Hungary were brought. And from here they were convoyed to the central part of the city, to the mill that belonged to Rudolf's family, known as Rudolf's Mill, which you will see on the next slide. So this is what Rudolf's Mill looks like now. So this building was filled with hundreds and hundreds of miserable people. Some of them were dying here. Some were moving around the town to look for some food, for some support. Anyway, one of the most tragic places in the town. During the Soviet times, it was converted into the garment factory and still used as such. We are in Stanislawow, Długa Street, house number 3, near the building that before the war was called the Mill of Rudolf. In the beginning of July 1941, several hundreds of Jews from Subcarpathia, from the Carpathian Ruthenia, what used to be Hungary before, were brought here by the Nazis, by the Hungarians actually. And they stayed here until the late autumn of 1941. Most of them died here. Among those who died were the following persons: Leibovich Leib, Leibovich Abraham, Katz Emmy, Moskovich Isaac Mendel, Katz Frida, Mermelstein Rudolf, Hershkovich Judith, Bistrik David, Heb Fega, Abraham Grun, Vaisura, and many others. Many deaths were registered along the same Długa Street in the houses nearby this mill. Okay. This is memorial sign dedicated to the killed deportees from Hungary. It is placed on a pillar within the fence around the Jewish cemetery of Ivano-Frankivsk now. It was put in the year 2011 by people from Hungary, I think, by the members of Evangelistic Church. Anyway, it's a bit difficult to find it. It is on the opposite side from the entrance to the cemetery. And the Hungarian deportees who died in Rudolf's Mill, or well, some of them were probably executed right here at the cemetery, are buried nearby. Here is the map of Stanislawow ghetto. The ghetto was started in the month of July 1941. We do not know the exact date or foundation of ghetto. However, we know that Judenrat was established on the 27th of July 1941. On the 1st of August 1941, the control over Stanislawow was transferred from the Hungarian administration to the German administration. So between the period of the 3rd of July up until the 1st of August, the Hungarian Jews were brought into Stanislawow and settled in the mill of Rudolf and in the area of it. On March 1942, the ghetto was liquidated. So here we see the Stanislawow ghetto, the plan of the town actually, the ghetto, the entrance to the ghetto. On this slide, this is a magnified section of the map. We see Belvederska Street that had different beginning before the Soviets came over. It was starting from Roguskiego Street. It was a bit shorter than it is today. And the gate of the ghetto was right here between numbers 13 and 14 as they are presented on this map. Here is the photo of the entrance to Stanislawow Ghetto done in August 1941, and the plan of the town showing the same place on the map.
The beginning of Belvederska Street. Since autumn 1941, here was the gate of the Stanislawow Ghetto.
A few meters along Belvederska Street, surrounded with the Soviet times blocks, inside a backyard, is located this miserable old house. During the times of war, this was one of the buildings of the Judenrat. This is the same house from the side. Most of the houses in this area were dismantled. Some survived. So this one for sure belonged to the Judenrat. This was also reconfirmed by Rabbi Kolesnik. On the other side of the street from this house, you could see this modern high-rise. Somewhere in this area, there was a mass grave in which several thousand victims of Stanislawow Ghetto were buried. Later on, the Nazis used lime to conceal their crime.
We're in front of the house that was housing Judenrat between the years 1941 until 1942. This is a very miserable house now. It's falling apart. The original structure was erected in the year 1922. A few years later, this building will hardly be there. I just spoke with the man who owns it. The building is in poor condition. The story of this building, besides being one of the offices of Judenrat, that is in front of the house, a few meters further, was one of the mass graves, where several thousand Jews from the ghetto were killed and buried. Later on, Nazis used lime to get rid of the signs of their crime. So this whole mass grave is somewhere in this area. We do not know exactly. Now the street is being very strongly developed. Lots of new construction, high-rise construction is going on all around. And this is the only building that really belonged to Judenrat between these two terrible years. The information was reconfirmed by Rabbi Moshe Kolesnik.
So this is the area where the ghetto hospital was located. The building of the hospital did not survive. However, it looked pretty much like this one. So the Jewish hospital was to the side from these buildings. Many cases of death were registered in 1941 and the first month of 42 inside Stanislawow Ghetto. This is the building of the Jewish hospital of Stanislawow that served the needs of the community since the early 20th century. In the records that I found in collection 154, there are several dozens records of death done in this building, and the dates of this death are June and July 1941. Obviously, after the ghetto was done, all the Jews were resettled, and since that time all the records were done elsewhere. So because this building is outside the ghetto. On the right side is the page from this metrical record showing one event of death that was registered in this building. In the following videos, I will show I will give some information about the present-day Jewish community of the city, what the synagogue looks like, where it's located, a few words about its history, and then it will be followed with the interview with the Rabbi Moshe Kolesnik, who is the head of the Jewish community of this town, where he describes in Hebrew the event when one person found information about his relatives using these findings in collection 154.
Here we are in front of the temple synagogue located in the center of Stanislawow. This was the largest, and still of course is the largest synagogue of the city, built in the second half of the 19th century to serve the religious needs of the soldiers, of the Jewish soldiers who were serving in the Austro-Hungarian army. The building is fairly large. Originally it had 4 cupolas on the top. It was built in the Moorish style. The cupolas were ruined during the war. After the war, the synagogue was completely rebuilt for the needs of the local Philharmonic, which was located here until 1991. In 1991, the local Jewish activist Viktor Kolesnik, who is now known as Moshe Kolesnik, took this building back to the Jewish community of the town, and it serves as the Ivano-Frankivsk Oblast synagogue ever since. He's still the rabbi here. The synagogue was damaged during the last flood. You see the ground floor is somewhat damaged, and the building needs urgent repair at the moment. So on the other side of the street is the building that used to be Yiddish theater in the past. Now it houses the local Philharmonic.
הדוד שלי הוא יליד סטניסלאבוב, קראו אותו גרמן פאלי. ובהתחלת המלחמה, בשנת 41, לקחו אותו לצבא הסובייטי, וככה הוא היה בפרונט, והיה ככה בהוספיטל, ואחרי מלחמה עם הדודה שלי, הוא התחתן שם ברוסיה, בטטריה, ואימא שלי לקחו ככה, באו אחרי מלחמה לסטניסלאו, היה אפשרות. ולא מצא אף אחד ממשפחה. אף אחד. שום זכר. לא יכול למצוא איזה, לא יודע, כלום. ואחרי הרבה שנים הם נסעו בהתחלה לפולין, מפולין לארץ, לחיפה, והוא נפטר היה. ולפני כמה שנים הביאו אליי את קצת מסמכים, חלקים כמובן. ואני ככה מסתכל על המסמכים האלו, זה מגטו. וככה שמה, בדיוק, מספר הבית, שם משפחה פאליק, רחוב בלוודרסקה 3, כל המשפחה רשומים, מי נולד, מי גר וכולי וכולי, נו, בטח שבשבילי זה משהו. זה לא, במשך הרבה שנים לא היה שום זכר, ומצאתי משהו. ברוך השם.
ברוך השם, תודה רבה.
This is the fence, the gate, and some remaining buildings of the infectious hospital that was located on the territory of ghetto. So several death cases took place here in 1941. Among those who died here were Gershkovich Denya, Nusim Simcha, Vek Moses, and Gruber Israel.
This is an example of one of the records of death of Mr. Isaac Herman, who died at Belvederska Street 26. You see, these documents are done on 2 sides of pages. One side are the regular tables, like regular metrical book, and on the opposite sides, because of the deficit of paper, I assume. So this is one of the records connected with the same Belvederska Street, like the core street of Stanislawow ghetto. This is an example of a regular page from the same collection 154, showing the death, registration of death of Stanislawow ghetto. You see these red lines. What's the significance of these red lines? We could only assume. Anyway, I have made the whole database based on these findings, and I'll be happy to share it, or it's also accessible through several resources in the internet.
We are at the site where once was the building of Kehila, the Jewish self-governance of Stanislawow. So the records that were done in the year 1939 and 1940 were done most probably right at the building that was located at this site. During the Second World War, most terrible battle was here in Stanislawow, and the whole area was completely devastated. So now we can only see some faceless Soviet blocks and this little monument to Madonna, which somehow marks the presence of the Kehila building in this area.
Here are the photos showing 3 Maya Street, the 3rd of May Street, which was and still is one of the main and probably one of the most fancy streets of the town. All the registered death on this street took place in August of 1941, probably right before the vast majority of the Jewish population of the town of Stanislawow was moved to ghetto. So this is another street along the same street. This is also 3 Maya, 3rd of May Street, very fancy building. I assume, well, people who died here, died because of natural causes, or who knows, difficult to say. As by the documents, they died, all of them died of natural causes. You see, the building is nice, fancy. Also the same 3 Maya Street, central part of Stanislawow, Ivano-Frankivsk. Here are 2 small houses along Vovchanetska Street, where the death records, to which the death records relate to. You see, more modest part of the town. Also, this street is located outside ghetto. Also, a house at Vovchanetska Street outside the ghetto. This was like a poor neighborhood of the town. This is a street called Chłodna, or Cold Street, in which also several death cases were registered.
We are at the memorial site located at the Jewish cemetery of Stanislawow. At this cemetery were several executions. Several executions took place in 1941. Several thousand Jews from the ghetto were brought here to be killed, and their fraternal grave is located right here. Before the war, this was a regular Jewish cemetery of the local community, and the most known item here was the oil of Rebbe Atenier, which is located on the other side. Altogether, there are 4 monuments to the Holocaust. The first one was built here in the Soviet times, and as the sign says, dedicated to the Soviet citizens, the victims of the Nazis. 3 others were erected after 1990. One is dedicated to the Shoah victims of Stanislawow province, one dedicated to the victims of the Shoah from the town of Bohorodchany. So 4 memorial signs. Several Jews from the ghetto who were brought here from Hungary, from the Hungarian part of what is now Ukraine, were also executed at this site. So this is the table at the same Jewish cemetery of Stanislawow, specifically dedicated to the Hungarian deportees who were moved here in 41 and exterminated. Many of them were exterminated at this particular site. The table was placed here in the year 2011 by the Hungarian Evangelistic Society to commemorate the memory of these innocent victims.
Sadly, the story of the Hungarian deportees has its continuation. On August 26-28, Nazis executed a number of people in the town of Kamenets-Podolsky. Among others was the group of over 10,000 Hungarian Jews. This is actually the photo of the execution site, which is located in the outskirts of Kamenets-Podolsky, surrounded with a new development, new houses. This is one of the monuments erected here in 1946 by the Kamenets-Podolsky Jews who survived the Shoah. This is a sign showing the events that took place at in this place and describing what had happened and showing the dates of these terrible events and the number of people who were killed at this site, including the deportees from Hungary. On the right side is one of the obelisks. Altogether there are 5 obelisks on this field. So the one on the photo on the right side was erected on the expense of the Hungarian government. This is the same sign magnified. You see, it shows the death toll of this sad place. So this is another plaque paying tribute to the victims of the genocide. You see, the Hungarians were first brought to Kolomia by train, and from Kolomia they were convoyed to Kamenets-Podilsky, where they've been executed. Why Nazis moved them that far? It's a question. One of the explanations is that these Jews who lived on the territory of the Horthy Hungary did not have the Hungarian citizenship, and this was the reason why Horthy administration deported these Jews to the newly established general government and later to the general government of Ukraine. So this is the sign put by the government of Hungary. These are the signs of 1946 obelisk commemorating the Elul 05, when mass executions took place at this site.
We are at the site of Kamenets-Podilsky mass extermination. In July and August 1941, over 20,000 Jews from this town, from the town of Kamenets-Podolsky and the area, were brought here, alongside with over 10,000 of Hungarian deportees who were brought here in June 1941. I assume part of these Hungarian deportees came here via Stanislawow. So they were first brought to Stanislawow, then were brought here. However, I'm not 100% sure about that. This is something that has to be verified. Anyway, on the 5th day of Elul, 1941. Here was a massacre of the local Kamenets-Podilsky Jews and the Jews from Hungary. After the war, the monument that is right here was erected by the Jews of Kamenets who survived the Shoah, and it was placed here with signs in the Yiddish and the Russian languages. Later on, several more monuments, 4 more monuments were erected here, partially by the government of Ukraine, by the Jewish organizations of Ukraine, and by the government of Hungary. Now just have a look around this area.
This is another monument dedicated to the same event. However, it's located over the territory of present-day Jewish cemetery, also erected by the Jews who survived the Shoah after the war in 1940s, in the middle of the 1940s. It's a bit difficult to find these both memorials. You have to take bus number 1 from the old town of Kamenets-Podolsky to travel to these 2 places, and finding them is not an easy thing.
I am at the old Jewish cemetery of Kamenets-Podolsky by the memorial sign to the victims of Elul 05, 1941, done by the Nazi Germans and their associates. This is a symbolic monument. All the executions in 1941 were done at the previous site. So now this is a regular Jewish cemetery. A few Jews remain here in Kamenets-Podolsky, and the cemetery serves since middle of the 19th century until nowadays. Most of the pre-World War II burials are in bad condition, overgrown by the trees. The other part, where I am now, including the Shoah sign, is the newer part of the cemetery, which became actually the cemetery after the Second World War. So now you will see the panoramic view of the valley of Smotrich River and the part of the cemetery with trees and bushes overgrowing the matzevot that are located there.